Hi, welcome everybody. We're really pleased to be able to welcome Dr. Diane Boyd from Liverpool John Moores University and one of her students, PhD student, who's joined us today. So welcome Diane, welcome Dana, and we're really looking forward to be able to talk about the sustainability resource. My name's Janet King, I'm the Sector Manager for Education and Childcare at NCFE, and together with Diane, we've worked on the sustainability resource. And of course, we have Diane's dog in the background, Tilly. Welcome to Tilly. Okay, so together we can just have a little bit of a chat really and talk about the background to the resource and sort of why we thought that was important. So it really started, I think, towards the beginning, maybe the middle of 2021, I think we started looking at this and started thinking, wouldn't it be great if actually we created something that could be picked up and used, a transferable resource that was straightforward, easy to use with young people that are students. We could use it with practitioners, we could use it, staff could use it, the workforce, parents, going across that sort of journey really, a resource for young children that introduces them to sustainability. Because I mean, when we think about sustainability, it's where to start, isn't it? And I think sometimes it's, well, how do you make a difference? And there's often anxiety around, well, I don't know, but I'm scared of what's happening in my world. Or there's that sort of, parents who don't perhaps understand, and children who don't understand, parents, practitioners, everybody. And certainly when it comes to those 17 sustainable development goals and how we can begin to take small steps to make a big difference. So I think that's the sort of background to the sustainability resource in the early years that we sort of co-produced. But Diane, if I can come to you first of all, because your passion and drive for sustainability, it's just absolutely inspiring and contagious. So I don't know if you just want to say a few words about why you think sustainability is important and why this resource was so important.
Thank you, Janet. And I apologise for the early woofs of Tilly. The sustainability is really important because as adults, we tend to make decisions about children all of the time, whether it's small decisions about whether they need to have their nose wiped or whether they are putting a coat on. But these are the major issues that are happening in the world, which are climate change, the loss of trees and inhabitants of in hedgerows, and all those sort of things are issues that should be discussed with children because they are the future. And if adults make all of the decisions all of the time about what is going to happen in their world, by the time these children become adults, there won't be any decisions left to make. And the idea for the resource really came last summer when I was just researching, and I'd had conversations with teachers. Nobody knew what the Sustainable Development Goals were, how they were implemented, what point was them, what were they, and I just started sort of like looking for provocations and looking for ideas of how I could incorporate the Sustainable Development Goals into early childhood, and it just grew from there. I just get a bit
Fantastic.
carried away and off I go.
No, fantastic. Thank you. And you've and Dana, you've probably had a chance now to have a look and see what that resource is like and how, the intentions behind it. So the activities are straightforward. They're simple everyday activities, a lot of them, such as reading a book or looking at birds in the garden and so on. I'd like to just ask you a couple of things, Dana, if that's all right. So thinking about that resource now, how you think that should or could be used in the early years, and what the sort of wider benefits of such a resource could be.
Well, I personally, for me, when I first read the resource, I just thought, wow, this is such a detailed document that brings in fundamental elements and merges them together. And that's where I think, reflecting on sort of my own research with my PhD, there's such a gap for that. I feel that educators a lot, like what Diane was saying, there's a lack of sort of understanding on what sustainability is, what the goals are, and there's confusion around how you can incorporate this. And I think the resource provides a perfect example of how to bring sustainability frameworks such as EYFS and Development Matters, along with science and the 17 SDGs, and demonstrate how they're interconnected through activities. And I think as well, personally, while going through the process of researching literature, there's a lot of debate, like I just mentioned, around the STEM subjects. They seem to be separate to sustainability. And I think that the resource provides examples on tools on how to do this, because obviously, I mean, the environmental pillar of sustainability is science, essentially. So I think it's extremely important that we have a resource like this one that can empower educators to make these connections, reflect, and in turn, that empowerment will then inspire children. So that was my take when I first read the resource.
Thank you. That's brilliant. And that really sums up, I mean, that's a wonderful sort of testimonial, because I know that's what Diane wanted, and certainly, you know, what sort of inspired us to keep going with that, and to produce such a document. I think the idea of having something that you can use with children just helps, doesn't it? Somebody described this sort of approach the other day to me, and it stuck in my head, about children becoming that sort of social impactor in a way, you know, because social influencer, because they're going home and they're saying, well, you don't need to have that light on, you know, or just you know, doing the sorts of things, making a difference, picking up some litter, doing those little things that value our environment, and just the simple things, but they're actually contributing in a big way. And it's that thing, isn't it? If everybody does a small thing, then big things will happen, big changes will happen. So I loved the idea of the child becoming that influencer. I thought that's so powerful, and that phrase stayed with me. Um, but I think as well, the idea of being able to start in the early years is crucial, isn't it? You know, and you're absolutely right. It's part of, you know, or should be part of that curriculum as children get older, and it becomes more of a, let's increase that knowledge, let's make that awareness, you know, wider, and so on. But if we start in the early years, there's almost a connection that's there before anything else. So it becomes habitual, doesn't it? It's a sort of, it's a value. It becomes a value maybe, and something that we live our lives by. And I think that's probably where we were thinking as well when it comes to starting with the early years, and not necessarily starting to develop something that could be used along you know, a key stage 3 or 4 curriculum document, for example. So would you both agree? I'll come to you, Diane, first, that actually starting in the early years does lay down that foundation for that sort of small habits that can make a big difference in the way we live our lives.
Yeah, I think but it's beyond the small habits as well. I mean, in the document, in the resource, I've put in things that some adults might think, why on earth have you included those? And all of the sort of societal issues and problems that we have that we don't actually talk about, even as adults, we don't talk about them. And the research has demonstrated over and over again that fundamental values and attitudes are formed in the early years. Research is showing that children can have sectarian and racist views by the age of 3. And therefore, if we can sort of like start from the ground up in trying to sort of support children to develop key aspects such as empathy and confidence and sort of agency to make differences, then it will then move naturally into primary and then into secondary. So that's why, from my perspective, it needs to start in the early years. I don't know about you, Dana. What do you think?
Yeah, so building on exactly like what you're saying about sort of that children's brains are more intrinsically open, so they're therefore more reflexive than we would be as adults. So I think it's extremely important at a young age to start getting them to think critically about things that essentially, you know, will affect their lives when they're older, will affect our lives. Um, Giving them sort of the tools and characteristics that will motivate them to act responsibly, and more importantly, like I said, to reflect on these actions.
Yeah.
It's needed to promote, like you said, Diane, empathy for each other and for the planet, which is so desperately needed in our world today.
Yeah, brilliant, excellent. And I know, Diane, that you're going to use the resource in ways with students, and hopefully we'll be able to capture some of those reflections moving forward as well, which will be good. And we're also looking at how this resource can be piloted with early years settings, and also with students that are in their sort of first year of a level 2 and level 3 qualification. So students at the age of 16. So how they can use that with their children and with the families that they work with in their placement. So looking forward to being able to see some of those reflections and evaluations. But for now, I'd just like to say thank you so much. So to Diane and Dana, thank you very much. Look forward to hearing the reflections from the students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.